start here with Ms. Demetra. I'm sorry, hold on a second. We're going to need a mic running around.
Hello. You hear me there? Okay, I just have a question. I am Demetria Marshall Leonard. I am from Wacomico County. I want to know, does Dorchester has a homeless issue? And if so, what are you guys doing to address it? Something that we can go back to help Wacomico. I'm just looking for some ideas.
Yes, we do. What we have is a lot of couch surfing going on. We have really the Salvation Army is the only homeless shelter significant that we have. I think there's one with a few rooms out in Hurlock. That's about it. I went to 6 months ago, I went to a homeless shelter, Benedict area in Ridgely. And was very much impressed by that. And part of what my vision of what we may be able to do is to, with the land bank that we're developing, use some of that space to maybe, with the help of the state, create another homeless shelter. The people, I mean, they're homeless and they're out on the streets. It's not because they want to be, it's because they can't afford housing or don't have a job, whatever. So it's something that we need to be doing something about. We have a lot of issues here in Cambridge that we're trying to deal with, and that's just one.
Thank you. Just feedback from Dorothy is that I think we need to take that mic off its frame, just hold it closer to your mouth for the next questions. Do we have another question from the audience? I saw a few hands. The lady in the white shirt, please, can you identify yourself and stand up and ask your question?
Hi, I'm Carol, and you can tell by my accent I'm not from here. We moved to Dorchester County, Cambridge, about 5 years ago from Atlanta, Georgia. So we love it here. We specifically chose Dorchester over Talbot for obvious reasons. I'm concerned, however, because as I look at my budget every month or every year, I find that more and more of my dollars are spent in Talbot County, not in Dorchester. And I live out towards the Neck District, so we are not directly within the Cambridge city limits. And I'm wondering, in terms of questions, what can we do, not what can government do, but what can we do to help draw people from my area to come into Cambridge and spend our money here as opposed to spending it over in Dorchester? Spend our money in Dorchester and Cambridge as opposed to Talbot. I appreciate that. And y'all mentioned broadband a couple of times, so let me use that as an example. And I can certainly appreciate what's being done with broadband, because when we first moved here, the realtor didn't tell us that where we live, which is down a gravel road with 3 other homes, there was no cell service for a cell phone. There was no landline available in our home, and there was no Wi-Fi. And at 70 years old, that was a little concerning for me. It's gotten a little bit better. We did talk to Bay Country Communications. We talked to the Chop Tank Electric people. I'm glad with what they're doing. But again, we're way down a gravel road with 300 other homes. $4,000 was their price for each of our homes. What's that, 16,000, just to run the Bay Country Communications broadband line down our long gravel road. My money goes to Elon Musk. I don't care how crazy he is. He's providing me some very fast and very inexpensive broadband. So again, I'm glad the efforts, but my money isn't going within our community for that service. And what can we do?
I just want, if someone else in the audience wants to answer, it's kind of a good idea too. It doesn't always have to be the speaker. So if you have an idea about that.
Let me, yeah, I was going to ask if you could address, or any, and also the scope and scale of broadband, because it's a question that comes up in every single forum, and it takes time. And can you speak to that and to the cost that she's mentioning? Then we'll take this up the first question.
Sure. Thank you first for microphone number. Okay. Okay, here we go. So I'm glad you're here. Number one, you were a Georgia peach, and now you're here in Maryland as our friends. Tell that to your friends. They'll be like, where did you move? But so a couple of things. The Eastern Shore broadband bill, yes, everybody's was originally wondering, we'll get it next year? No, that's not the reality of it. What we came up against for numerous years was, number one, we had to work with the federal government to get the major, and I don't have all the lingo right, but the major line, if you will, to get the infrastructure down our major highways, Route 50 and Route 13 in our areas. That was the first step. We worked with and talked to several providers, such as Verizon and all these other ones, and Sprint. They all said they didn't want to touch it because it was too costly. Then that's when we came up with Choptank Electric. And the reason that came about is because Choptank Electric has the infrastructure. They had the poles already up, they had the manpower, and some of those things that they had was able to offset some of the initial expenses. And so to that end, that's where the work started. And to be honest with you, when I was fighting for that bill, we kind of were on pins and needles that it was going to pass, because everyone, again, in the legislature didn't realize that the Eastern Shore didn't have, just as you said, internet in some areas, landlines, and things of that nature. And so I had to bring home the point to say our farming community uses it now, technology for their crops. Our EMS providers, they need it when they're on the road. All of those things, so those day-to-day life needs. But to speak more about the specific costs, yes, right now it is expensive because they are trying to deploy it. Caroline County was the very first. Somerset County is actually further along. And so Dorchester is moving along as well. But what happens is that the federal funds that we get and the state funds that we put towards it helps offset the expenses to the end consumer. So right now it might be $4,000, and if we get additional money, then it could go down to $3,000, and it could go down to $2,000 at some point. The goal in the state of Maryland, as I said, is 2025. Last week I spoke in Annapolis at a broadband conference, as a matter of fact, for rural communities. And they said that the verbiage of saying everybody's going to be connected by 2025 is really not true. What they are saying is that the funding in these communities and in these counties will be deployed by 2025, and the real connection 100% by 2026. That's the timeline. So the more federal funds we get and the more state efforts that we put towards it, and the conversations that we're having today helps educate people on the other side of the bridge that realize this is a reality and where we live, and our young people should no longer have to go to McDonald's to do their homework because they can't do it at home. So yes, just bear with us. We're trying to get there, but there are some expenses that are a little bit higher based on where you reside.
It's definitely better. I just want to spend my money in my county as opposed to send it to the office.
Let me ask if there are other panelists who want to address this question.
Not broadband, but you had a question about getting people into Cambridge. I thought. We have a Cambridge Main Street organization that supports the businesses in the community. I think they need volunteers, they need board members, so that certainly would be a way to become engaged and also to share your ideas. The Dorchester Chamber of Commerce is right here in town. It too is a great group that works to promote what's going on in the county, businesses as well as locally. Dorchester Tourism over at the Salem Park is a great place to get good information about what's going on here in the city and the county. And finally, there's a Midshore Regional Council that promotes economic development for the Midshore region, which is Dorchester, Talbot, and Caroline. I just went on that board here. The head of the chamber in Dorchester was on that board as well, on the executive committee. That's on that as well. And these kinds of issues are what we are talking there about for all of those three counties. How do we do what we do better? How do we build the economy better? How do we address issues? I was talking with the executive director about transportation issues in the three county area. Transportation here is a huge problem all up and down the Eastern Shore, but given our poverty, many people don't have cars, don't have a way to get to the grocery store, much less to get to a doctor's appointment. So we have Midshore, Marlboro Community Transit providing that service that is good, but it's not as good as we need. So a lot of needs, a lot of places where people can step up if it's an interest of theirs.
Let me ask Carol and others, what kinds of things take you to Talbot? What is it that, because the mayor has now described several initiatives and ways to get involved in discussion, but what is it that's really taking the dollars away from here?
There's cleaners here.
So cleaners, other things that are getting you in your car.
Shoe stores.
Shoe stores.
Lowe's.
Department stores, clothing.
Lowe's.
Lowe's. So building supplies and Lowe's. Are there other things that are Macy's? You like a Macy's? Get Salisbury to keep theirs. And let me turn that back. You're working in development. Will there be other commercial activities planned?
So I too came from southern Virginia almost 4 years ago. My wife and I looked for our forever home, and we found Dorchester and Cambridge and fell in love, and that's why we're here. We bought a fixer-upper on the West End and spent the last 4 years fixer-upping. It's going well. We do most of the work ourselves. We enjoy that kind of thing, but I understand the concerns that people are expressing about places to shop. Just broadly speaking, so everybody can put this in perspective, those types of retail that you're discussing are actually trailing indicators of a thriving economy. And we all know that Dorchester and Cambridge struggle sometimes with a thriving economy, and the best way to do that is to, of course, improve the base, which is your industrial base and your big business base. And then when population increases, when travel routes get more populated, that's when those types of retailers really look. They have these certain metrics that they need. Also, what we're trying to do at Cambridge Harbor, we have about 29,000 square feet of retail space that's planned. CWDI is looking at a model where, working with the private developers, we would own the first floor retail space and they would own the living space above it. And then we would activate the retail space, and because we're a nonprofit organization, we could do that in ways that are less expensive for the retailers, and it could actually help with entrepreneurship and small businesses, doing with some tenant improvement allowance that may be greater than typical, doing revenue and income-based leases as opposed to assessed per square foot. So we do have plans for those things. I can't guarantee you whether it will be a Cleaners or a Macy's, or those types of things. But yes, there is retail space, because in order for Cambridge Harbor to be successful, or really any community to be successful, you have to address all aspects of the community development, which are those things that community needs, and economic development, which are those things that the business community needs. And so we do have those planned in.
How can people address that with you? You know, whether you have open board meetings or do you have meetings where people can address specifically ideas that they have? Many of these people are very expert in their fields. people who've had businesses elsewhere and are here retiring. Where's a place where they can actually ask, not just like this, where we're asking a question, but hear the answer more specifically or contribute to what stores should be there in CWDI?
So a couple of things. We do have open public meetings about every other month, and we are going to start to advertise those more directly on our website, cambridgeharbor.org, cambridgeharbor.org. If any of you would like to speak with me directly, please come up afterward. I'll give you my card. It has my phone number, it's talk or text, it has my email address. We'll set up a time to speak. And I really thoroughly enjoy getting people's ideas, and I've told this to people in the past, no matter where I've worked, and I've done a lot of community and economic development in the past. I don't care if it's 2 people or 2,000 people. I don't care if it's in a country store or a ball field or a church fellowship hall. If you have a group of people that you think would like to contribute and have input on what we're doing, we're big believers in community input. We've had a lot of community input sessions over, whatever 30 years it's been. I've done a couple since I've been here. Please let me know. I will go where you need me to go, and I'll meet with the people that you need me to meet with so we can get that type of input.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Please identify yourself.
Thank you. I come here today, my name is H.L. Ward, and I come here today with a good deal of pessimism. And I hate to lay that on you, but I had to put this in some measure of context. I grew up here. I graduated from Cambridge High School in 1964. It was an opportunity, and I graduated to leave this community as an 18-year-old. I took advantage of that, and I didn't just leave, I fled. I have some very great memories of growing up in Cambridge, and I have some things which still to this day, I'm 77 years old, some things that still to this day bother me. And some of it relates to the fact that I was here in 1963. I was here in 1967. I lived on Leonard Avenue, and I can remember looking out my bedroom window on Leonard Avenue and seeing Pine Street burn. There's a history and a legacy specifically to this town which seems to endure. I spent some time on the internet prior to this meeting looking at what perceptions there are about Cambridge on the internet. Some of it is not quite accurate. Some of it is quite accurate. And I have a specific point that I hate to drone on here, but I've been away for 50 years plus. And my wife and I were fortunate to retire at the same time, and we decided to move back to Dorchester County. And we live like, Carol, you're out in the neck. We're out in the neck as well.
Can you please answer your question?
I'm
Can you please ask your question?
sorry.
I appreciate
I'm sorry.
it. I appreciate it.
Well, I think context is very important. I understand. My specific, yes, sir.
I'm Greg Meekins. I just want to respond because I understand your pessimism I've been there. I grew up here, I left, came back home. I am optimistic about Dorchester County and the city of Cambridge. I've said for a while, I've seen good things happen in Cambridge and Dorchester County. Our challenge has been we have not sustained what we've done. And I'm a member of the board of Moving Dorchester Forward, and that's been my call for many meetings. I've said we've got to sustain what we do. I've heard some good, your comment was very on time. I lived here and went to college, lived in Baltimore 13 years, and I came back home. I sat back 2 years and watched. This place seemed to stand still in time. But I've seen movement, and the doors are open for people to be at the table, to be a part of the solution versus a part of the problem. It's working in many areas. I'm a retired educator. One of my biggest concerns, and I really don't have a question, and you cut me off as soon as you need to, it's also about, when we talk about economic development, it's about the quality of life of people here in Dorchester, Wycomico, Taunton. We have experienced so much generational poverty, and we're still dealing with that. And that's why education is critical. Understand this, the majority of our kids are doing the right thing. We've got a chronic few that get the press, if you will. And that's what we have to be careful of, but it's about behavioral health that our kids and families need. So I appreciate what you're saying. Even when my heart hurts, I remember there's something bigger than me. It's us. And also about how we go about developing our young leadership, because some of us are getting older. I'm prematurely gray.
I can remember going in there and transacting business. It has been an eyesore up and down Ray Street for years, and it is very good to see that something could be happening there. Steve, could you differentiate for me, please? And this subject came out in conversations with friends, local friends, that we don't need another subsidized project. Could you differentiate, please, between subsidized and workforce housing?
I just want to say a few quick things first. One, generally speaking, we appreciate that both gentlemen grew up here, left here, and came back. We often hear about the from here's and the come here's. I'd like to change that language if we can, call it the rose here's and the chose here's, because both of those are very deliberate and have a lot of value, and you have done both of those things. If you rose here, you bring great context about the history of this place. If you chose here, that's a deliberate act. Almost any of us here could have chosen anywhere in the world to live, and those who didn't come up here chose Cambridge, so it's very important. Part of what CWDI is doing, and we talk about sustainability, Mr. Meekins mentioned sustainability. Part of what we do and part of what our plan is that once we deliver the Cambridge Harbor project to the community, we will sustain it in perpetuity. We have a business model and a plan for that, whereby the private development and investment dollars that are ring the perimeter of the site will maintain the public spaces. And let me be clear, there's about 20 developable acres out there. 7 of those acres will be full-time, open, free, public access. They are on the waterfront. The public will have open, free access to the waterfront round the clock. There's a 3.5-acre park. There's about a half-a-mile public promenade, walk, bike trail all along the water's edge that will tie to the city's bike paths. Those are the types of spaces that private development can foster, that are open to everybody, that maybe can get people together in ways they haven't been able to do in the past because of the divides that somehow seem to be endemic but really aren't. I get it, they're in our hearts and our heads, but we can change that. As the mayor says, it's us. Right? Whether you say it's the government or us, we are the government. We are those people. We make those decisions. So be proactive in that way. I understand the pessimism. I appreciate the optimism. But really, this type of dialogue is the beginning of what we're trying to do. The end will be when we all can do this anywhere we want, anytime we want, and feel comfortable doing that with each other. We're trying to provide those spaces out at Cambridge Harbor.
I have something from Alex who'd like to speak.
My name is Alex Green, and I am the part owner of Harriet Tubman Tours. So I would speak to Mr. H.L. here about what you experienced during your raising here. I was raised in Talbot County, and Mr. H.L., what you experience is what I sell as an experience. So I had people come here. Yes, we did meet at the Stanley Institute. So all of the things that happened back in history, people want to know about it, and we share that with them in a tour experience, just like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and all these things. So I started this business about 7 years ago, right, off the very thing that you're talking about, the lack of information. Nobody really put anything into it, and they had a byway system that was being underutilized. And I still think today it is. But we're working towards making sure this information gets out to everybody. So, with that being said, progress is being made on a daily basis. We have successfully built a sustainable tour company that people from all around the country. We just did a tour for the third year in a row for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. They come here every year to the Hyatt and do their conference. They sought out information. We were in position. This is one of the best places on earth, Dorchester County. And I tell you why, because of the history. Now, Talbot County has a lot, and it's established, but we are not quite known as well as Talbot County. I work vigorously. This is what I do full time with a business, a tour business called Harriet Tubman Tours. So, Mr. H.L., it's not lost yet. And I understand your pain or your thoughts, seeing this stuff and experiencing all that. But there's so much here that people want to know about. So much here that people want to learn about. And of course we could use other things. We could use funding and all these things. And I'm not going to get into the backing that we've got with our organization. But every dollar, the ARPA funds, Mr. Mayor, these things help the economy. You have to reach out and find out about this stuff. So what my point is, we live, ma'am, that came from Georgia, you live in one of the most fabulous places on this earth. Believe it or not, I live in Dorchester County, and it is rural, and it doesn't have a lot going on, and I have to go to Easton for those. But we still have a jewel here, so we just have to reach out and just have to lock arms and make sure all of these things get prominent and held out in front of everybody. Because the number one question that I have here with Dorchester County is, how much do people know inside of Dorchester County about Dorchester County?
Can we, I didn't know if the mayor wanted to respond, and if others want to respond.
We're very brief with HL's question, and I will tell you, one of the things that I get to do as mayor is to shoot the cannon that starts the Iron Man and Eagle Man, and I did that the other night, and the other day, and I now have tinnitus, so I did not hear everything that was HL said, but I did hear Hearn building and workforce housing versus subsidized housing. I'm not an expert in this area. Okay, I'm not an expert in this area, but what I understand the Hearn building has been, the proposal is for workforce housing. And the expert that we hired from the University of Pennsylvania, I think, or Penn State, tells us that we are not able to support market rate that building would not support market rate apartment rentals. And so the Green Street housing, I can't think of the name of it, they are the only company that proposed coming in and developing the Hearn building. There are multiple challenges there. One is that there will be no preference for Cambridge and Dorchester County residents who are living here now who would want to get into those apartments. So it's open to anybody. And the fear is, oh, everybody's going to come from Baltimore, and, and nobody in Cambridge or Dorchester County is going to get an apartment in this building. It is not the building of the building that is the concern to me. It is how it will be managed and how it will be monitored and how it will be able to be run effectively to ensure that people in this community who presumably have jobs, whether it's low-income jobs or moderate-income jobs, will be able to have the opportunity to live in a decent place. And my belief is that the Hearn building will be that. The other side of that issue is because the Hearn building is in the downtown business area, the concern of the business community is that they would like to have people with greater wealth buying those properties. We have a huge housing crisis in the Eastern Shore. And I think the delegate probably can tell us more about that. But we need houses for people. We need apartments for people. We need to be able to allow people in our community to live in decent housing. How that will all wash out with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council will be in the future. I don't know where we're going to be lining up with the Hearn building, but it's an important topic that community engagement, you all need to be part of the discussion about so that we can make the best decision for Cambridge and for its citizens.
Other comments from the panelists? And then I have an insight that I'd like to walk over.
To answer your question, the difference between subsidized and workforce housing. So workforce housing, I guess, is just what it is. Saying someone who's working in your community, whether it is a teacher, whether it is law enforcement, or whatever, the trade or profession may be. And I think that's necessary. It's necessary because this community struggles with hiring law enforcement, police officers. If they are able to come and live downtown and have quality housing, then by all means, that's an incentive. That's a way to maybe reduce their rent and figure out how to get them to the place where they are able to have sustainable housing and sustainable wages. So that's my workforce piece. The subsidized piece, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this, is that, federal or state funds are provided to a community to help offset the housing, okay? So that's the traditional side, I'll say, of it. The Hearn building in particular, I remember the day when it collapsed and we were all on the street that very day. And yes, I want to see movement as quickly as possible for the betterment of the community, for the optics of this community, but overall the fact that, we need to take care of the building. But what I don't want to see is hidden racism. And I'm going to take it there to the point of, I spoke with another delegate, one of my colleagues contacted me who represents this area, and shared with me some of the concerns, as he is a resident of Cambridge, so he has that more day-to-day input than I do. But talked about, not wanting to have low-income people reside downtown. And I said to him, this feels like a similar conversation I had when I was on the county council back in about 2007, 2008. For a residential building, beautiful building, that is now located on the Wycomico River. And the county administrator said to me, well, we don't want to put poor people on the Wycomico River. That's scary. It's scary to hear that, first of all.
Very
But
scary.
secondly, to then know that policies are being delivered in that same thought process. And I'm afraid that this is where this community potentially will go if we don't continue to speak up and say, hey, we can't discriminate where people live because of their income. And just because we might want to see downtown thrive, why can't it thrive with somebody who's making $30,000 a year? Why can't it thrive? Everybody don't have to be at the upper echelon. Yeah, one day we will all love to get there, but the reality is that if you don't have a voice at the table to say, hey, this is hidden racism, that you're not going to put someone who has a financial challenge at this time and they're not able to live in quality housing. That to me is a problem. And I don't know if you were going there, sir, but I kind of felt like it was. And what I want us to know is that your economics don't define who you are. And you can be in this community, you can live downtown, you can be in inclusionary zoning, which means that your business is downtown, down on the first floor, and your housing's on the second and third floor. That's options. Those are tools that we provide as legislative tools, but it does not, in my opinion, allow you to discriminate from where people can and cannot live. And so I hope with that Hearn building and any other building in this community that we will stand tall and say, hey, this is a beautiful area. It needs to be redeveloped. We have tools at the state level to help with the funding that comes in the community, but we can't sit back and say that it's okay to say that if I have a certain income that I can't reside in this building. So I hope that the city council and whomever else gets to make the decision that workforce housing is an option because we need more professionals who are in those professions to help our communities, our teachers, our police officers, etc. Be able to live downtown. That's an incentive. I think that's great. But we also got to keep in mind that the average citizen, the single female that might just got out of college wants to live downtown too, and she only might make $30,000. So don't discriminate based on that. And that's just my feeling, and that's where I just wanted to respond to your question.
If I could real quickly add to that, Sheree, I'm not sure if you remember, but my name is Jermaine Anderson. I'm Executive Director of Genesis Community Development Corporation. And when we were really grassroots people, we introduced doing something down at the Hearn for Artists Live Workspace. And that returned the same rebuttals. And that's like 10 years ago. Poor people were coming and living in our downtown. And so here we are again, 10, 11, 12 years forward.
60 years ago.
No, I'm giving them my little bit of time of just being here. That we're still having that kind of backdoor conversation, and it's still undercover. Those questions or those comments, and believe it or not, that's what gives me my fire in my bones to do what we do here right now, where you're sitting right now, that you get to experience other culture in excellence. I'm going to pass the mic.
Thank you. Do we? That's fine, yeah.
Were you about to call for another comment? Just wanted to say a brief word for education. My name is Dave Harper, I work at Chesapeake College. I have deep roots in Dorchester County, but I defected to Caroline a little while back, and so I live in the country in Caroline County. But there's been words said here about pros here and shows here, and I was the one that left and took a while to learn the wisdom of coming back. And I just want to speak a word for the next generation that we have here, because everyone in this room will be part of the solution, and for Dorchester County and for our communities, but it's really going to be the next generation that brings that to fruition. And so investment in education is really important. There are a lot of students that I've interacted with in my work at the college, which by the way has been here for 40 years, believing in people's potential and their ability inherently to reach that potential if they're...
To explain for people who don't know the regs, or you may not know
Yeah, if I could walk through that wall, I'd be in an office in a classroom for Chesapeake College. So, but it's about giving people a hand up to realize their full potential, their God-given potential, and to support their families and invest in their communities. And we want to be part of that solution and investing in the next generation to do that. But a lot of students that we interact with don't realize the jobs, the opportunities, the entrepreneurial nature of this community, and that they can in fact stay, that they don't have to leave. And I just wanted to say a word for workforce education. It's expensive, it's hard to fund. The Maryland Blueprint is expensive, it's hard to fund, but what it's doing, you probably have heard of it, is it's planting a flag in the ground for Maryland education to say by 2030, 45% of high school grads will not just be high school grads. There'll be high school grads and apprentices, or high school grads with certifications that they can get a good job with, or high school grads with college credits, even up to and including an associate degree. So it's a big diversion to the path of workforce development and realizing human potential. It's not going to be easy to sustain it. There's questions about whether school systems and political will remain. But it's such a good investment because it's an investment in the next generation. And honestly, they're the ones that are going to fix and going to get farther than we have, but we can give them that investment. And last thing I'll say to the delegate is, as somebody who lives in the middle of the sticks, I have 2 teenagers at home who, from the bottom of their very hearts, thank you for your investment in that broadband initiative.
Thank you. I was in fact going to pivot to education to complement the housing discussion. There are many educators in this room at all different levels, and I invite you to speak to the blueprint or other aspects of workforce development. Anyone who's had a business and has had problems finding the people they want to work, are there folks that would like to discuss some of the education issues? Because as I started in my own remarks, one of the major engines of growth is to have an educated, innovative workforce. And when you look at the surveys done by the Dorchester Development Office, one of the major things our small businesses are saying is they're having problems getting a labor force and labor force they need. So are there people who could speak to some of the issues raised here? But there's other educators here, the reading initiatives and others. So massive efforts going on to try to support and improve education in Canada.